Armed criminal groups in northern Nigeria have taken their operations to a shocking new level by establishing what security analysts are calling a parallel government system across farming communities in Kano and Katsina states. Reports emerging today reveal that these bandits have entrenched themselves in two major forest reserves, Falgore Forest in Doguwa local government area of Kano state and Rugu Forest in Faskari local government area of Katsina state, where they are now demanding up to 50,000 naira per acre from sugarcane farmers before allowing them to harvest their crops. This is not just another case of random robbery or kidnapping. What we are witnessing is the transformation of criminal gangs into organized governing entities that collect taxes, enforce rules, and punish those who refuse to comply with their demands. These forests sit at the heart of what is known as the Kano-Katsina Food Belt, a critical agricultural corridor that supplies massive quantities of sugarcane and maize to major markets like Dawano Market in Kano, and the implications of what is happening there should worry every Nigerian, regardless of where you live. According to conflict and crisis journalist Bakasine, who has been tracking insecurity in Nigeria's northwest region, these armed groups have completely taken control of these forest areas and are operating with the confidence of a legitimate authority. Farmers who have spent their entire lives working these lands are now being told they cannot harvest the crops they planted with their own sweat and money unless they pay what amounts to illegal taxation to criminal gangs. The levy is specifically targeting sugarcane growers, but maize farmers are also feeling the pressure. And experts are warning that if this continues unchecked, we could be looking at serious food shortages and massive price increases across northern Nigeria and beyond. What makes this situation particularly terrifying for the farmers is what happens to those who refuse to pay or cannot afford the 50,000 naira per acre levy. Reports indicate that non-compliant farmers face brutal consequences, including intimidation, the deliberate destruction of their crops right before harvest when they have already invested everything into the farming season, and the very real threat of violent attacks that could cost them their lives. Many farmers are making the heartbreaking decision to simply abandon their farmlands entirely because the risk has become too great and the financial burden too heavy to bear. Think about what this means for a moment. These are people who depend entirely on farming to feed their families and earn a living, and they are being forced to choose between paying criminals or losing everything they have worked for throughout the entire planting season. The forests where these criminal groups have established their bases are not small patches of land. Rugu Forest in particular is a vast expanse that stretches across multiple local government areas and even crosses state boundaries, making it extremely difficult for security forces to effectively patrol and control. Falgore Forest in Kano has a similar challenge, with its thick vegetation and strategic location providing perfect cover for armed groups to hide, plan their operations, and evade capture. These forests have been known for years as hotspots for criminal activity, but what is happening now represents a dangerous evolution where bandits are no longer just hiding in these areas, but are actively using them as bases from which to impose their will on surrounding communities. The fact that they feel confident enough to openly demand taxes and enforce payment shows how weak government authority has become in these regions. Security experts are sounding the alarm that this development could trigger a wider food security crisis across Nigeria. When farmers cannot access their land or choose to abandon farming because of insecurity, the immediate effect is a drop in food production, which then leads to scarcity in markets and rising prices that affect everyone from Lagos to Maiduguri. If you are enjoying this breakdown and want to stay informed about critical developments affecting our nation, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss important updates like this. Nigeria is already dealing with high inflation and food prices that many families are struggling to afford, and having productive agricultural land in states like Kano and Katsina effectively held hostage by criminal groups will only make things worse. The sugarcane and maize that should be flowing from these farming communities to markets across the country is either not being harvested at all or is being taxed by bandits who are enriching themselves while ordinary Nigerians suffer the consequences. What is particularly disturbing about this situation is the pattern we are seeing across northwestern Nigeria, where armed groups are not just engaging in one-off criminal acts, but are establishing systematic control over territory and people. This is not the first time we have heard of bandits collecting levies from communities. Throughout 2025, there were multiple reports of similar taxation schemes in various parts of Katsina State, with some communities being forced to pay millions of naira collectively just to avoid mass kidnappings or to be allowed to harvest their crops. Some cases, desperate farmers were selling livestock and household belongings to raise the money demanded by these criminals. The fact that this has been going on for months and is now expanding to include the establishment of parallel government structures shows how weak the response from authorities has been. The reality on the ground for people living in communities surrounding these forests is of complete abandonment by the government. Many of these rural areas have little to no security present, and when farmers report threats or attacks, the response is often too slow or never comes at all. This creates a vacuum that armed groups are happy to fill, positioning themselves as the real power in the area and making it clear to residents that they answer to the bandits, not to state or federal authorities. Some communities have tried organizing local vigilante groups to defend themselves, but these efforts are often no match for well-armed criminal gangs that have sophisticated weapons, motorcycles for quick movement, and knowledge of the terrain that comes from spending years operating in these forests. The question that needs to be asked urgently is, what are state and federal authorities going to do about this escalating crisis? The Nigerian military and police have conducted operations in the northwest before, but these efforts have clearly not been enough to defeat these criminal networks or restore lasting security to affected communities. Part of the problem is that these bandit groups are highly mobile and can easily move across state boundaries, and they also benefit from the vast ungoverned spaces of these forests that security forces struggle to patrol effectively. Additionally, there are concerns about whether there is enough coordination between different security agencies and between state governments to tackle a problem that does not respect administrative boundaries. For the farmers currently facing this nightmare, every day brings difficult decisions about whether to try and negotiate with the bandits, whether to pay the levies and legitimize their authority, or whether to abandon farming altogether and try to find another way to survive. These are impossible choices that no farmer should have to make, and the fact that this is happening in 2026 in areas that should be protected by the Nigerian state is truly concerning. The farmers are watching and waiting to see if their government will defend them or if they will be left to the mercy of armed groups who now claim authority over their lives and livelihoods. This is a defining moment for governance in northern Nigeria, and the response from authorities in the coming weeks will determine whether the Nigerian state can reassert its authority or whether large areas will continue slipping under the control of criminal networks operating their own shadow governments.